So I wanted to discuss. Apparently today there were a lot of rallies, pro and counter rallies, seeking to ban what's being called Sharia law. And I think if I saw a video of one of these rallies, and there was a gentleman who was a Sikh, and he said, most people in America fall somewhere in between these two extremes, but they feel like they have to take sides. Essentially, my feeling about this is that the issue here is more an issue of semantics than it's an issue of substance. What do I mean by that? I mean, I hear people like, Sean Hannity is probably one of the most mainstream people who talks against Sharia law. Now, the semantic issue here is with this term Sharia law. Sharia law is almost superfluous, it's like almost saying, you're stuttering in two languages, the way I've heard it said. You're saying the same thing, it's like saying pizza pie. Pizza means pie, at least that's what I've heard. I don't know if it's true. What I mean by that is, in Jewish names, sometimes we say you stutter in two languages. You have like a name Yitzchak Isaac or Zev Wolf or Shraga Five. The same names, the two names that mean the same thing, just in different languages. Anyone with common sense who believes in freedom of religion in America, who's on the right, who believes in libertarian ideals, I would hope, should have no issue with nonviolent ceremonial aspects of Sharia. If Muslims want to have halal meat, just like Jews have kosher meat, I can't imagine anyone could have a problem. I know there are people who have issues with halal meat being sold as not halal, which really shouldn't. I don't see why that should bother anyone, but certain people might have, unless you're from the Sikh religion, because the Sikh religion prohibits the consumption of halal meat, just as they do kosher meat. Mostly it's halal meat that they prohibit. But that being said, you know, the Sharia, it tells the Muslim how food is considered halal or haram. Just like Jewish halacha tells us which foods are kosher and not kosher. Just like in the LDS church, the Mormon church, they have a word of wisdom that says that they're not allowed to consume alcohol, just like the Muslims. They're not allowed to consume caffeine and other things, dietary laws. And so too canon law and other faiths, Catholic Church has canon law and so forth, has its laws. Same thing, marriage and divorce. These things are issues of law in different religions. So, the Catholic Church does not allow divorce. On certain rare conditions, there might be such a thing as an annulment of a marriage, to say that they were never married to begin with. Judaism has laws of marriage and divorce, which are very complicated and defined. Uh, and even so, if someone would have a civil divorce and not have a religious divorce, it's and they had a proper religious marriage, according to most opinions, that's the requirement. Although others will be more strict and say even any form of marriage. If the wife had a civil divorce and didn't have a religious divorce, if she remarries, she's committing adultery. So too is in Islam, they have the laws of marriage and divorce. So too, which are quite similar to the Jewish rules of marriage and divorce. And so too in other faiths, each religion, they have their rules. Those that have rules. Not every religion has rules, but legalistic religions do. Although to be totally without any rules in the religion, though, kind of defeats the whole idea of what religion means. It means to be bound to something. But on the other hand, when someone like Sean Hannity talks about Sharia law, so he might say something. There are certain things that I think everyone could agree that don't fit into American society. Things like, which might not necessarily fall into Sharia, they might fall into Taqs. There's different aspects of Islamic jurisprudence, but and also there are different interpretations of Islamic jurisprudence and different interpretations of Islam, different forms of Islam. It's not a monolithic community, just as it is the same with most other religions. Even a religion like the Mormon Church, which is about 200 years old, has so many different, and historically has had dozens and dozens of schisms. And even to today, even though there's the main LDS Church that, essentially is excommunicated all other branches, that didn't make those other branches go away. There's all different types of things that exist in the world. And especially in a country like America, which has a Jeffersonian value of religious freedom, all the more so. Which I think is a beautiful thing, and that's how it's supposed to be. Now, that being said, things like, there are certain things that certainly have no place in America. Honor killings. That's not something that fits into the American law. And if someone is part of a community that has such a practice, no matter what their religion is, whether it's a form of Islam or a form of another religion, if someone does that, they are subject to the laws of the country, for which they have to pay for their crime. That I think everyone can agree that there's no place in America for honor killings. There's no place in America for terrorism. These type of things. Then you have certain things that are gray areas. Sean Hannity talks about, the way certain women in the Muslim religion will dress, and and he feels uncomfortable with that, and that's fine for him, but he cannot say that American law would force someone to dress a particular way. Now the thing is, I would think that pious Jews don't go to the beach when there's men and women together, and so they just don't go, or they'll go at night when there's nobody there, or different things. They find some place that's more private. Same thing, swimming pools. they'll find hours. They'll try to establish hours just for men, just for women, so forth. And so to Muslims, but the Muslims can't expect to impose on public facilities unless there's enough popular support locally for such a thing. I mean, there was an issue earlier this year that certain New York City swimming pools, particularly in predominantly Orthodox Jewish Hasidic neighborhoods, sought to have certain hours just for women. One in particular that was noted, they had just a few hours a week just for women, no hours just for men, and the rest of the time was for men and women. And another one, though, had hours for men and hours for women, and hours that are mixed. Some people felt that was a problem of separation of church and state, but really it's not any more than, women's only gyms and things like that, really. The only issue is, alright, that most of those gyms are private. You don't have necessarily public gyms that have those, but I don't see any reason why not. But it has to be done in a way that's within the realms of the laws locally and so forth. So my feeling is, but the thing is, I think everybody would agree, even the most liberal left wing who's upset at these anti-Sharia rallies would say, of course, there's no place for honor killings in America. Meaning there is a limit, there is a place where we say no. And also, I think people who have a belief in a separation of church and state, which is not necessarily what freedom of religion means, would feel uncomfortable with Muslims imposing ideas of their law into the civil laws, as the same people feel uncomfortable when Christians and Jews do so. I personally don't see an issue. I think you can have communities, depending on what aspects they would want to add and which aspects they wouldn't, and depending on the community and depending on if it's done in a democratic way. I personally don't have a problem with local municipal theocracy. Also not for Christians, not for Mormons, not for Jews, not for Muslims. If it's on a local level, that is an aspect of how the country was founded with federalism. And so if a community would want to form a village government structure, which includes some aspects of religion, even though it's currently illegal, I don't personally have a problem with it, but the thing is, it's illegal. But there are ways around that. There are ways to express it that it's not a religious issue, and it's not discriminatory. So there are things to find out about these things. So what I would suggest, I doubt Sean Hannity's going to hear this, but instead of attacking Sharia law, and I understand when he says Sharia law, most people say Sharia law, they mean either violent applications of Sharia or theocratic, even non-violent, but theocratic applications of Sharia. I think everyone, the vast majority of Americans, including the vast majority of American Muslims, oppose theocratic or violent, even non-violent theocratic applications of Sharia, certainly beyond a local level. However, fair accommodations of religious beliefs should be honored Um, there's a whole issue about recently about during Ramadan to allow school children in public schools to have space to pray together and things like that. And if it doesn't interrupt the school schedule and so forth. Now, and again, everyone has their own thing. Um, so I think if the people who are quote unquote anti-Sharia, I mean, if they're just anti-religious freedom, that's a problem. And so that's and that's what the people who are the anti-Sharia rallies feel, that these people are trying to eliminate religious freedom, they're trying to be bigoted, they're trying to keep out Muslims. Whereas the other side said, no, we're not against Muslims, we're against Islamic law being established as the law of the land here. So essentially, I think the vast majority of both sides of this aisle agree. Although there are extremes on both sides that disagree, but most people who are showing up at these rallies and so forth would agree, but it's more of an issue of semantics. Meaning, I would hope anyone who values religious freedom should not have a problem with Muslims praying 5 times a day and eating halal meat and having courts that are private arbitration courts to decide matters of marriage and divorce and monetary disputes and things like that, just as Orthodox Jews have, and conservative Jews have as well, just as Mormons have, just as the Amish have, just as Catholics have, to greater extent and lesser extent in various issues. So, when the people who are on the left of this issue hear Sharia law, they think that's what they want to ban, meaning, you can't dress with a hijab, you can't eat halal, you can't pray 5 times a day, you can't, you can't have the marriage and divorce and monetary disputes and things like that decided by an imam. But why not? It doesn't hurt you. Is there bigotry in America? Yes, and that's a problem. But I'm just saying, it's none of your business, And I'm worried, and that's why I take the side, really the more left-wing side in this argument, because I'm worried if these things get on the books, anti-Sharia, is that going to mean that rabbinical courts are going to be next? Is there? You can't have a rabbinical court for divorces, for monetary disputes, for conversions. Now, if a rabbinical court does something illegal, they assault someone, and they'll say, well, we're administering lashes as the Torah requires, that there's no place for that in America. And we don't do that today. Even the most, extreme, don't have such a concept. So, what's going on here? But the odd thing about all of this is that who's taking which side? Because I've usually seen that the right in America today is more libertarian, and the left is more fascistic. And what we really see is just this week, Governor Cuomo signed a law raising the lowest age of marriage in New York City to 17. Until now it was 14, but you needed permission from parents and a judge. Now, if it shows a lack of trust in a judge, to say that this person is, the judge should know if he sees if people are ready for this or not, or if there's abuse and things like that. But and it's really none of the government's business, something like this, and in a sense, it's anti-Sharia, meaning this is like an anti-Sharia movement, an anti-traditionalist movement to ban marriage under the age of 17. Um, it's it's really quite shocking to me. But in reality, all the people who are saying, and I got into arguments on Twitter over this, but the fact of the matter is that you cannot say you're protesting these anti-Sharia protests because you're on the left, and then go and say that you're that you're happy that Governor Cuomo raised the minimum age of marriage. It's a contradiction in terms. My wife told me she remembers, she was in high school and there were couples 15, 16 years old, Mormon couples. They got married. The schools provided, they provide babysitting for the girls, for the kids. They were married. Some of them are still married. They have very happy marriages, and they finished school and everything. Whereas here in New York, they don't have the marriages, they don't have the relationships, but they have the kids. They drop out of school because there's no babysitting, because they think, well, if they have babysitting, they're going to encourage the kids to have, to have teen pregnancies. It's all right. On one hand, we have we have federalism, that New York has every right to raise their minimum age to 17 for marriage. But the problem is they're really disenfranchising minorities in their community, and when they say that they don't want to disenfranchise minorities, that's exactly what they're doing. Whether it's Amish, Mormon, Muslim, Hasidic Jews, whoever it is, that's what they're doing. And I think the law had enough protections in it as it was, because it said that you needed a judge to a certain age, and it also demonstrates that Cuomo has a lack of trust in the judiciary. If he doesn't trust the judge to recognize what's what's going on here, so there's a lot of very complicated issues in this. So this is one case where I feel these are two cases that show the hypocrisy of both the left and the right, because in these protests, I would probably myself be on the left. As far as what Cuomo did last week, we don't really hear any voices on the right upset at him about it. Nobody's really upset about it, partially because of this whole anti-Sharia and everything. But if you were really libertarian, you should be upset about it. It's, and like someone says, oh, the whole world's, this is what they have to work on now. I mean, it's I mean, my issue of it was, two men could get married, but a 60-year-old man and a 60-year-old woman can't get married in New York. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. If you're for freedom of marriage and love and this and that, so then which is it? Is it are you about? Is it about freedom, or is it about extending an agenda? Because this is this is putting forth a message that it's not about. Um, and here's a man, Cuomo. He's supposed to be Catholic. He has a girlfriend. They never got married, and they have kids together. You know, he's spitting on his heritage. His father was so devout, and in his, even though he was a liberal, but he was a very devout Catholic, and he didn't pass on to his son. It's very sad. So okay, all right. Well, thank you for watching. It shows the hypocrisy here because. Make up your mind. What do you want when you're when no this plastic is milk. Just go on this plastic. Just, if you want it's really hypocrisy here. More hypocrisy on the left, but there's hypocrisy on the left and the right with this issue. Um, so, well, thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. All the best.